Hello, everyone, and welcome and another podcast. Today, I have a great pleasure to introduce to you Dorian Yates of the coaches because you always stays in your basement in the shadows. A man who never sleeps, they say. You answers your competitors and your athletes in 5 minutes. That's some people even think that you are not a person, that you are an AI. So I have the pleasure to introduce you, of course, Blue Taylor. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, man? Thank you for having me on.
I'm great, especially that you are with me today, and I was so happy when you answered me and just told me that you come to my podcast. That's a huge pleasure for me.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, especially that we are not have many great podcasts with coaches from abroad. So this is a huge opportunity to Polish people and Polish fans to closes the gap between your mind and creating a perfect competitor, because this is a topic for today. So if you're ready, we can just start.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Okay, let's start from the off season, and I would like to make an example, just because if we're gonna overshoot the details, it's gonna be just too hard to explain anything. So let's say that I am a guy from the light heavyweights, weighing like on about 220, so it's 100 kilo if I am correct, and I want to go to the super heavy. And you are my coach, my new coach, you know nothing about me. So, how do you set up the training duration for the off season? And do you focus more on the volume, on the intensity, splitting into cycles during the whole off season? What about the your training idea for that guy?
I get that question a lot, honestly. And it may sound vague, but it's the truth. I do everything case by case. I'm too OCD. I don't have a single approach. The analogy I use is I'm basically a mechanic. I
So,
work on a lot of different cars, and I use a lot of different tools. There isn't one set approach whatsoever. I mean, I use so many different things. I mean, you got different body types, different genetics, different, so many different variables with individuals, whether it's, digestion issues, their goals, I mean, there's just so many things.
okay, so let's say I am just introduced. How about this guy? Okay, so we can just focus on this specific person. So just you can make some ideas for this guy. This is a guy who was normally working from the beginning on the progressive overload manner. So like a top and a back of sets. He's normally eating like 300 grams of protein, let's say, like 500 carbs right now, and 60 grams of fats. Like, for example, he's weighing 220, so it's 100 kilos, doing a 5 times 20 minutes of the cardio. Split is back, chest, rest, legs, shoulders, rest, for example,
Yeah.
and
It,
and uh, he's like a 12 to 15. No, let's say is 8 to 10 body fat. Just so you don't have to do anything with him. You can go
okay.
straight into the off season.
Yeah. As long as everything's firing, I mean, as far as his metabolism, his metabolic state's perfect, everything like that. I mean, I'm very big on food. I'm huge on protein. And I like to really jack up the protein. I mean, those are the building blocks, of this whole sport. So I like to gradually build it up, but it's going to depend on that person, what they can tolerate at that time, because you can't just push it, little bits here and there. It just depends. Sometimes you work it in through liquid form, or and then build up. Of course, whole foods are the best, but a lot of guys that aren't used to higher protein, you can't just slam them with it. You have to introduce it, methodically, as far as maybe doing a little bit of whey, on top of their meals, or doing a little bit of whey in between the meals. And then as they get hungry, as they speed up metabolically, then you can say, okay, they're used to this. Now I can switch over and add these extras can now be whole food. I'm very big on the protein. As far as carbs and everything like that, it really just depends. I mean, on the timing, how these people are processing different types of carbs throughout the day. I'm very big about orchestrating things around the workout. If you're, doing more advanced protocols, with insulin and different things, IGF, et cetera, taking advantage of maximizing that hyperemia, of shuttling those nutrients, when things are going to be utilized best. So, but yeah, the food is the main player in the whole thing. I mean, a lot of guys say that, and they're blowing smoke, sometimes, but like, I'm very, very big on food. You gotta eat. You gotta eat. You look at the biggest guys, you look at what they eat, they are eating.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious, especially when it comes to you, as many people probably saw a couple of the podcasts, but this is the mostly for the Polish people that are not exactly speaking English, so they might not be similar to your approach. But how, if you had changed, because the question was, how about the training split and the training type
Yeah.
for the
Yeah, the
guy?
training type.
Do you change
Yeah.
anything or?
Uh, of course, we want to titrate up with strength, with everything. Of course, in the gym too. I mean, that's the other piece of the puzzle. Um, when it comes to the training styles, again, coming back to the analogy of a mechanic, different tools, different vehicles. I'm not one of those guys that's just going to say, okay, I trained with high volume when I would trained competitively, so I believe you should train. It doesn't work like that. Some guys need to train like Kai Green, and then there's other guys that need to train like Dorian Yates. It just depends. I want to find what makes them click and push that, as long as health is first priority. And the things that they're doing that are not working, get them out of the way. So if the person, when someone signs up with me, they fill out a Blue Nutrition bio form where they put everything, their history of literally, their bodybuilding journey. And then I can go in there, get a full picture on things and say, okay, I think this is working. Or they've been doing this for legs, but I noticed they're lacking leg development. Okay, let's try this approach. Maybe the high volume just works on their limbs, but it's not working on their back and chest. So it could be a complete mix up. But of course, at the end of the day, regardless of what person's doing, I do believe in, obviously, a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle. So it's like we want to, go up in weights little by little bit, make that muscle work. And, every now and then, I'll have, clients, send me a video of, because I want to know, because of course, I'm in one location and I'm training people in, over 40 countries now. And it's like, I'm not there with them in the gym. And so it's like, they can tell me on the phone or whatever, or through text, yeah, I'm killing it on back day. My form's perfect. But then I can say, okay, send me one heavy working set of rows, put the camera to the side so I can see exactly, your tempo, your form and everything. And then I get a better picture on, oh, okay, this is perfect. Or, maybe you should go a little heavier, you're not really opening up your lats. I mean, there's a lot of things, but overall the goal is to get stronger and make that muscle do all of the work. We're not power lifters, we're just trying to make that muscle work and be under as much pressure, through the contraction and the stretch.
So basically, you just watch how the guy trains, look at his current split, and decide what is a great idea to change. For example, his legs are not growing and he doing a regular progressive overload. So maybe you try the volume type for a couple of weeks and try if it works. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's play by play. I don't do anything cookie cutter. I
Okay.
nothing cookie cutter. I despise that. No, it's everything has to be for that person. I which a lot of people here know and stuff. Like I have OCD. Like I actually have
Yeah.
obsessive compulsive disorder, and that's how I'm able to train hundreds of people and do this with everybody. Uh, if I didn't have it, I don't think I'd be able to do it at this capacity. But everything has to be controlled. All these things are moving parts and they have to be controlled for that individual. So that's a big thing with me. I'm not going to again push something that's not going to work on somebody. I don't have any pride when it comes to that individual of saying, well, this is the way I did stuff or this is the way it should be. No, no. I want the absolute best for that person and keep them in a good state of health while we do this. So, whatever it is, if keto works for this person, let's roll with keto. If it's, moderate carbs, if it's carb cycling, if it's high carbs, whatever makes that person the best. And you have to be that way because there's so many different body types out there. It's crazy. And sometimes the evolution of that individual, I've had guys that have started off with me where, they're extremely carb sensitive, but after working with them a while and really building up their system and their toleration, they're able to actually utilize carbs more efficiently over time. So, when I first was competing, I would have to eat like 50 grams of carbs, to get lean, and 3 hours of cardio. And then once I put on a lot of muscle, then I was eating, my low days were 500 grams of carbs and I was doing 20 minutes of cardio. So it just depends on the person and their journey.
I have to ask you because it's consuming me. You seriously have some guys bulking up on a keto?
What I mean by that is I'm meaning more towards the contest time. No, no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I'm talking about contest time. Yeah,
can
yeah.
we
Off season wise. Yeah,
can we
yeah,
do
yeah.
it like a yeah, like a one topic
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
time?
yeah,
Just because I
absolutely.
think that's could be a better idea to for people to just put it everything in a blocks in a small
Yeah, yeah,
pieces.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I apologize. I was just speaking more broadly. Yeah,
Yeah.
as far as off season, again, yeah, carbs. There needs to be a place in off season, regardless. There has to be, for your thyroid, for everything. They serve a purpose, especially for your workouts and everything. But the placement, the sources, the amounts, that has to be different for everybody because you have some guys that are going to be extremely carb sensitive, but you have to say, okay, well, let's just work these carbs around this window when they're going to be truly, utilized. Pre-workout, intra, post-workout,
Yeah.
replenishment, and then the rest of the day when you're not going to need this, so we can keep you tighter because you're naturally maybe a little heavier, you get, fat easier, and then you have other guys where they need those calories because they're an inferno and they're just chopping up stuff, and so they can utilize carbs, throughout the day, and especially again, once you get into more advanced protocols, with, various types of insulins and stuff like that, those carbs serve a purpose.
I just wanted to say that you can tell anything you want here. So there's no taboo like in my podcast. So if you wanted to say something, just say it straight. So it's a free
Yeah, yeah.
space. It's a free space.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. I totally understand it. It's
Yeah.
just it really just depends because I mean you could have some guys that are doing a little bit of a fast acting insulin with certain meals throughout the day. Humalog, Novolog,
I'm gonna
Apidra.
ask you
Yeah,
about the insulin,
yeah,
but just later, okay?
yeah.
On the off-season diet, if I am able to eat a lot and I am lean right now, would you rather me to stay lean during the off season, or you like more it like a full-blown mass mode, like a
No, I don't like
80,
that at all.
90s
No,
style?
no, no, no. All my guys, they have to stay in good shape because there's a certain look you get by staying on the sharper side in the off season. A prep isn't going to fix everything. That certain translucent look to the skin, the thinness, your insulin sensitivity, all these other things are going to benefit you if you stay on the leaner side. And your process and your gut health is always much better as well. So I definitely lean towards staying sharper in the off season.
Okay, and the most important question, how do you count your macros? Because some coaches counted it from the various sources. So, for example, if you eat pasta, they have some protein in there. If you eat, I don't know, chicken, they have, for example, on 100 grams, like a 2 grams of fat. Do you count this? Or if you counting your protein, you counting like a chicken is 20 grams of protein per 100 grams, and that's all.
I think it depends on the source of food. I mean, when you're getting into say a protein like tilapia, I'm not going to really dig on the fats. It's so low. I mean, the
Yeah.
major source there is protein. I'm not going to worry about the trace amount of fat there. But then when you get into another type of protein, like say salmon, then you're
Yeah.
dealing with a much higher content of fat and then protein, and those things need to be considered. I think it depends on the source of the food.
Yeah, but I mean in general, because here in Poland we say it like it counting macros from every sources or from direct sources. So for example, if I say 80 grams of carbs, for me it's 100 oats, 100 rice, or 300 of potatoes. It's the same.
Oh, I don't
Even
believe it. No, 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 no.
yeah,
I don't. I'm not a macro guy. I don't like it
okay.
because it's just an empty number. Because these things are processed different. There's a different response with your pancreas. I mean, a guy eating sweet potatoes and then eating a slice of bread, that's a completely different response.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not a macro guy. That's gonna when my clients get their plans, you're not getting an option. There may be a listed option, like you can have this amount of cooked white fish and the type of white fish or shrimp on this meal. There might be a little option like that, but when I see these other plans where it's like proteins and there's this huge category, when these guys come to me from other coaches, I'm like, this is absurd. It makes no sense. Like, these things work completely different the way they're processed and everything. You eating some white fish and then eating some ground beef, that's a completely different thing. But I think it's an easy way for some people to do when they don't fully understand nutrition and the science behind these things.
Yeah, okay. I understood. Okay, so we set it up. So that's the most important thing. So if you say 500 grams, we know it comes from the direct sources like a meat, fish, or whey protein. Doesn't matter. Okay, so that's okay. You told me that you are a high protein guy. So let's count it up. How many grams for kilogram of the body weight you like to go with your guys? I know it depends on the digestion, but let's says that guy is tolerate the protein very, very well. He have no issues, no bloating, no gas, no I don't know. He's just perfect. His digestion is just perfect. He can consume
Yeah,
whatever he wants.
then we can definitely push it. And of course, it depends on where his current food is, what he's done prior. If he's at a moderate protein and his
300
metabolism's
gram,
great.
300 grams of protein, counting from only the direct sources, so from the
So,
meats,
so if
and
he's a
his
two,
100 kilo.
okay, so he's 220 eating, would you say 300 grams of protein?
Yeah, like at 3 grams per kilo.
Okay, okay. So that's to me, for that body weight. I mean, that's moderate to low. I would like to build up over time to where we're getting, up to, at least 450, get up close to, over 500. But again, it doesn't always work on that person. You know what I'm saying? If he's responding well, his digestion is good, and his body allows it, then yes, definitely go that direction. But not everybody can process that much protein. I've seen other guys where I really want to push it and I know they'll grow more, but then it's like, okay, we're causing a little bit too much stress on the body here. You're stressing about the mills. I don't want you stressing about the mills. Your digestion is messed up. It's like, okay, we got to take a step back. But if everything is perfect in the perfect scenario, yes, I would like to build up. Someone who weighs 220. I'd like to get double their body weight. At least in protein.
So what's the preferable sources for the protein for you?
I know I sound like a broken record, but of course it depends on the individual.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you have to give me some plan. You just can't say choose whatever you want and we try.
No, 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 no. Yeah, of course, based on that individual, if because I deal with so many people across the globe. It could be a religious thing. It could be a certain food that they just do not eat. Maybe they got sick on as a child. Maybe where they live, they cannot source that type of protein. But say if the person had, just a plethora of, protein sources and they could just say, I can eat anything. Of course, it's going to depend on their history and what they're doing currently and how that reflects on their look. But I do like a variety of protein sources because, these things carry different amino profiles. I think that that's beneficial. So, fish, shrimp, chicken breast, turkey breast, lean steak, lean beef, salmon. I mean, I like to utilize eggs, everything. These are all, even the food are different tools for that machine. And you need to figure out again in this category of the of tools, what is going to be the best for this machine. And sometimes again, I'll have guys that I'm like, hey, I think you would do great with a lighter protein that's going to be processed much quicker and keep you a little sharper in the off season. Let's employ some more fish. And sometimes they don't like it, and sometimes they get used to it, and then you have other guys where I'm like, hey, we need to have, little denser meats, higher fat content, and again, the placement, uh, certain chemicals, maybe you don't want in that same window of time with the fat of your meats. I mean, I'm I'm
But
an OCD person.
but basically you like to this guy consume like a leaner types of protein, fish, like a lean chicken breast, turkey breast, and stuff like that. Yes.
Yeah, because it's because they usually, tend to stay sharper. I'm not one of those guys that's going to eat, ground beef, 7 times a day. I don't believe in that. And even for the guys that have amazing metabolisms, it still is too much for their stomach and their digestion ends up taking a hit.
What about the whey proteins? Do you allow it?
Oh yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah,
okay,
waste
so
fantastic. Yeah,
you
again,
have
that's a
you
go
have
ahead.
so you have no problem with meal, for example, cream of rice and whey protein before the workout and after, for example.
I have no problem with that if that's going to be beneficial to that individual. No, I don't have a problem with that.
Great.
Do I believe in when people are doing the majority of their protein through whey? I don't like that because I'm a big believer in whole food. Um, but I think it's a way of getting it in and pushing that number if the person needs that amount of protein. And some guys can eat whole food, a lot of it before they train, and you have other guys that can't. They have to have something lighter in their stomach when they're going into the gym.
Great. Okay, so what about the fats? Do you prefer to keep it lower or do you like keep it higher? I say in general because obviously there's a guy who needs a higher fat content because the calories have to be crazy high and they are not gonna eat like Roman Fritz 1,500 grams of carbs every day.
Yeah.
So, what's your preferable choice? Let's say that guy is great on both. What would you choose?
I tend again to lean towards a little lower on the fat. I'm not the biggest fan of that. It slows down the digestion too much.
Yeah,
I see too much bloating. Um, I see guys that sometimes believe they can utilize more, and I think they're judging by their palate, rather than their physique. But they do serve a purpose if orchestrated right. But yeah, I lean on the lower end of the fat content, and of course, it depends on the placement of the type of food too. You have some guys that you may may need to have some fat sources before they go to bed, just to hold them over because they're going to drop too much, or some guys you could put a little bit in between the meals just to hold them over because for whatever reason they can't that they're processing the carbs too fast. So again, it's a tool that can be used wisely.
Do you see the correlation in the cholesterol levels? Because I saw that if you keep the fat lower, your cholesterol levels are definitely way better, way
Yes,
better.
absolutely.
So this is the reason why I ask, just because I don't think that bodybuilders who are using grams needs to keep the high fat in their diet, just because they basically not gonna turn it into the testosterone, and the cholesterol and the fats. It's mostly for building blocks for your hormones. So if we manage to get it from the outside, we don't have to produce it inside. So most of that fat's probably gonna just destroy our cholesterol levels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. That's why I was saying a lot of guys sometimes go for the fats because of the taste and the cravings and certain things like
yeah,
that, or because they have a crazy metabolism. But I see some guys, even if they have a fast metabolism, and then I'm looking at their lipids, and I'm like, yeah, you're getting away with it, but look what's happening internally. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
again, yeah, and blood work's a huge thing for me. Huge thing. That's how you're going to get a greater scope of things.
of course. And how about the carbs? Because you tend to keep your guys on a very high protein, and some guys says that the carbs are protein sparing, even though I can't imagine how it works. But okay. So how about the carbs? As much as the guy tolerates?
In the off season, we're
Of
speaking
course.
again.
Yeah, we're speaking
Okay,
about the off
so
season.
so yeah, where it can be utilized. I mean, again, with insulin and certain things like that, I definitely want to take advantage of that window, that workout window, and maximize, the shuttling and replenishment. So, uh, but again, it depends on that person. Sometimes they can utilize them across the day. Sometimes they can't. Sometimes I got to keep this guy sharp because he tends to get fat. He's not used to this, he's never been shredded before. So I'm like, the off season is pre-contest. It never ends. It's just a different chapter of contest prep if the
Yeah.
person's a competitor. So I mean, things can be utilized during the day. Certain types of carbs, so they're not getting that high rise, an insulin response. I mean, it just really depends. But I do like carbs, but again, it depends on the person. I mean, it really does, and again, people's physiques the internally can change over time, more muscle, the way you're breaking down, metabolizing things. And I usually see most of my guys that stay with me that stay in better condition, that put on substantial muscle, their carbs just keep going up and up. I,
Yeah.
I hear it all the time of, oh, dude, I can't believe I've been with you for a year and I never thought I'd be eating this much food, or even during prep, like, holy shit, I can't believe how much I'm eating. And it's so beneficial to the metabolism.
Yeah, I have the same problem. Guys
Yeah.
that told me at the beginning that I can't handle carbs. I am more like a fat guy, and if I eat much more than like a 400 carbs, I'm gonna be fat. And then we finish the off season in decent shape at 1.2 thousand, or like 1200 grams of carbs, and they are looking great. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe in that as well. So, uh, tell me, what about the calorie and carb cycles? Do you like it? For example, like a standard training and non-training days, do you tend to lower your carbs in the rest day on the rest days, and for example, maybe like up the fats a little bit, or do you like it keep steady throughout the week? I know it depends, man, but
Yeah. Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
say this is the first sheet that you're gonna send me. Let's try
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You said, let's
Yeah,
try it. So
usually,
how do you
usually,
stretch
you
it?
know, it comes down to utilization of that type of food. So, if the person is not training on that day, I don't usually have them eating the same amount of carbs. I don't I don't think it serves a purpose unless there's a guy who's just burning through shit, like crazy, and he can get away with it. But for most guys, I mean, I think that for insulin sensitivity reasons, I think it'd be best to lower the carbs on the day that you're not training, and if that person everything's going well digestively and everything, raise the fats a little bit, and that could be adding fats or just using different sources of fattier meat. But yeah, higher carbs definitely on the training days, as
Okay.
far as off season goes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So uh, tell me, what are the biggest diet mistakes that athlete can make in the off season, in your opinion?
Again, uh,
Maybe from your experience,
from
what do
my
you?
experience, what I
Yeah,
see is sometimes guys embrace the off season too much.
yeah,
Again, think with their palate more than what's in the mirror. I think that's the as far as staying in shape. I would say that is an issue that I see sometimes. Is just hey, it's the off season. I can go and eat this, or why can't I eat this? Or I give them their plan, and they're like, well, I don't see pasta on here. I'm like, why would I have you with pasta? Because I like to recomp guys a lot before we go into growing because I want everything, firing on all cylinders. And like, where's my pasta? I don't understand. And I'm like, dude, you don't have abs. Why would I give you pasta? It just depends. But yeah, again, it just comes down to the individual, man. It really does. But yeah, I hear that quite often.
yeah,
And as far as growing, sometimes the flip side of it is guys that actually need more food, they're saying, "Oh man, this is too much, dude. My jaw hurts, bro. I can't do this." I've had guys quit the plan because they're like, "Hey, you're too crazy, bro. You're too OCD. You're basically you're too on top of me, uh, and you want me to do all these things that are going to take me to the next level." And they basically, sometimes admit, "I am not ready for this. I thought I was. I don't want to eat. Because honestly, that should be your worst part of your off season is
yeah,
eating too much clean food."
yeah. So for summing up, is not make it the off season like contest prep, because guys, from my experience as well, is guys think that this is the off season. I can snack between the meals because it's the more calories is better, and they tend to lose insulin sensitivity very, very fast because they blood sugar is rising nonstop. They are not
Mhm.
coming down between the meals because they are snacking. Oh, I ate only an apple. Doesn't matter. It's carbs. That it's gonna raise your blood sugar, and it sucks
Mhm.
when it never comes down. So yeah, this is I think that like you said, this is the most stupid thing you can make on the
Yeah,
EOS.
every day is contest prep. People need to really know that. It's just a different chapter of contest prep. If you're a competitor, every day you win the shows in the off season. And I know that's, people say that a lot, but I mean it's really the truth. When you have certain guys like say, the year that Brandon Curry won the Arnold that year before the Olympia, everybody thought he was so much bigger and he weighed much less. He was so much sharper. That's not going to always contribute to that limited prep. That's and you find out, oh, because he stayed leaner in the off season, his skin is thinner, he has a healthier look. He didn't have to stress out his body as much to come down. Yeah, every day is contest prep.
Okay, so if every day is contest prep, how about the cheat meals in the off season? Do you allow your guys to cheat?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
How
With
often?
certain meals, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't do a free for all, but I mean, depending again on the person, you know, if they're eating very strict, I can, to that person, I can say, okay, you're not there yet. but I can give you a little boost in calories, go and have sushi. I want you to have this many rolls, these types of rolls, if you're going to use sauce, use this. Or you have the flip side of the other guy who has a raging metabolism, and I can say, hey, you're killing the food, you're healthy, your labs are great, everything. Go and have a burger, a fries, and a small dessert. And then I'll have those unique individuals where they can really get away with it and their blood work, lipids, everything. And I can say, eat whatever you want for 20 minutes, and they're like, okay, I'm going to eat this, this, and this. And then they send me a picture of all the food still sitting on the table because they couldn't eat for, they couldn't get past 15 minutes. But again, it's a wide range. Again, whatever is best for that person. But I do believe that. I think it's a mental reward. It's satisfying. Again, you're in contest prep, but there's a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, this is something that Dominic Mutasio actually teach me, because before I worked with Dominic for a year, I was a guy who never allowed anyone for a cheat meal. I thought that cheat meal are bad. You can't allow it for a cheat meal. But right now I understood that it's something for your mental break. And some guys need it. Some guys
Yes.
just need it. And it's sometimes it's even gonna improve your look because your stress level are down. You sit with your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend if you're coaching a girl, and hopefully and it's actually not bad, not bad. So but you have to have some sort of good relations with that athlete, because some guys are gonna told you I eat only a one burger, and they order, for example, two pizzas, eat a bucket of ice cream, and I don't know, coach. It was only a burger, yeah. So yeah, you
Yeah.
have to you have to believe your athlete. Okay, so mini cuts. This is a trend for this up like for about 3 to 5 years in Poland. Uh, Everyone just doing mini cuts in the off season. Do you like to collaborate on mini cuts on the off season? And if
Yes.
so, when? What are the reasons for doing a mini cut?
The big thing is insulin sensitivity, the conditioning, having yourself, you know, in the right state, before prep. Sometimes during the off season, even though the guy's in decent shape, I may say, okay, let's go ahead. Let's shock your system here. Let's get a little leaner here. And then it's almost like pulling back a slingshot, during off season, cleaning things up and then letting go, and they get a good boost. Usually with food, their gut health, everything, their metabolism goes on fire, and then we go back to where they were previously in the off season, and then we're even eating even more food, and they're sharper, and it keeps their body familiar mentally with going through restrictions, because sometimes people stay in the off season way too long, then they go into prep and it's this huge mental hit. You hear guys, well, I need to get in that state of mind again. But if they're always, familiar with, going into those areas, it's a lot easier to transition. But yeah, the mini cuts are great at all levels, mentally and physically.
How do you like to manage your mini cuts? Is there like a very fast and short and hard cut? For example, 7 days, but you cut, I don't know, half of the calories, up the cardio. For example, if they do in five times 20 minutes, you're gonna do it 6 times 45 minutes, and then add maybe some clen and yohimbine and stuff like that, and do it very short but very hot. Or you like to do it, for example, 14 to 21 days, but a little bit slower.
I like to do it if it's if it's not a recomp, if this is a guy that I'm working with currently, he's already in good shape, and we're just going to do, I like to do a shorter one just so it creates that shock. I don't like to lean on the chemicals so much at that point because sometimes when people do mini cuts, they're automatically, well, let's add in Winstrol, let's add in Tren. It's like, no, I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
I don't want to create additional toxicity. All I want to do is reset you, calorically. So it's like it could just be cutting back on the food a little bit. It could be adding a little bit of cardio, maybe both, maybe upping the volume in the gym, things like that,
Let's clear what is a little bit. A little bit. For example,
Um,
if let's say I eat 5,000 calories, how much calories you gonna, and you wanted to make a short 7 days cut for me. I'm doing 6 times 20 minutes cardio. So how about that
yeah.
situation? And
So of
I'm in
course,
decent shape, but I have problem with eating. My
yeah,
digestion is starting to decline, and maybe I kept a little bit more water. I'm a softer. You noticed
yeah.
that.
So you're at 20 minutes of cardio a day. Okay, let's start off. Let's do this for, 3 to 5 days and see how you respond. Let's maybe go up to 30 minutes a day on the cardio. The other carbs that you've been utilizing throughout the day that are outside of your workout, let's maybe lower those a little bit. Let's still keep that volume around your workout so that's utilized because we want to still make progress as far as development. We just want to cut back and clean things up. So it could be that simple, and you'll have other guys that maybe I'm like, okay, maybe we need to carb cycle for a second here and clean things up, insulin sensitivity, and again, carb cycling doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes it's great in the beginning, and then your body actually shuts down because the lower days are too much. Um, but it could just be simple variables like that, it depends on the person. Or how about you're doing your 20 minutes, but you're doing that, low intensity on a treadmill. Okay, we don't even have to increase the time, the duration of your cardio. Let's just have you do it on stairs for a little bit, on a higher intensity. Keep the 20 minutes. You're doing this type of volume in the gym. Let's mix it up a little bit, hit some different depths of fibers also. Let's raise the volume, during your workout. Let's take out some of these slower sources of carbs and go with a little faster. Let's take out, just we'll keep your carbs the same. Let's lower your fats. There's so many different ways of doing it. And again, I know it sounds, maybe I talk vaguely, but I've literally have trained thousands of people, and currently I train over 300 something people. I work with so many people, and and there's so many different ways of doing stuff with each individual. And sometimes you'll have the same situation come up with the same person, where it's a completely different thing. Where you're like, okay, that worked the last time, but this time this is going on.
Yeah, but it's hard to believe that you don't have like a preferable way, because I've always tried to like suit the best idea for a guy that it based on how he reacts. That's obvious. But I'm not gonna lie. I like always keep high carbs in with everyone as much as they can tolerate. It could be
Yeah,
500 grams or 1500 grams. I have always tried to keep my guys on a lower fats.
yeah,
If they needed more, I'm obviously gonna add it. But the first plan, it's always looks almost just the same for everyone. And then, which I'm gonna try to pick the puzzles that don't fit and replace it with
yeah,
the puzzles that fits. So this is the kind of way I am thinking, asking that question, because
yeah, yeah,
you have your preferable way. For example, you would love to your ideas and your best structure just fitted that guy. That's obvious, yes,
yeah.
but
I'll say
that's not
this.
always the case.
Yeah, I'll say this. Again, going back to the analogy of being a mechanic and tools, I have my favorite tools. I'll say that.
Yeah,
Certain
yeah.
tools that work for a lot of people. I love high protein. I like keeping my guys lean. I like utilizing carbs at certain times. I like my guys shredded ahead of, way ahead in contests. I'm like, I have my favorite tools. but those favorite tools don't work on everyone. I wish they did, but they don't. And so,
That's obvious.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
It's
I am wanted to bring closer your preferable way to the people, your way of thinking. What would be the best if it works? Because that's obvious. That's everyone is different. So, for example, maybe I can eat 400 grams of protein, and Stuart Sutherland needs to eat 200 more or 200 less because his digestion is sucks, for example. I am
yeah,
not,
yeah,
I am just
yeah.
bringing
But
up this too because it's your most
if
known client.
yeah, yeah. So it just depends again, like what is best for that person, not is what is best as far as my
Yeah,
preference.
but
So
we assuming I'm tolerate everything just great. You told me to eat crab, and the
yeah,
crab
yeah,
is delicious for me, and I am waking up with new veins on my legs.
yeah, yeah. If everything, kind of, I know what you're kind of leaning towards
Clicked.
my style of things. Like
Yeah,
I want to push food, food, food. Yeah, absolutely. I want to push mass amounts of clean food. Absolutely. That's definitely, you could call it my style, whatever. As long as the guy's in good shape, internally everything is good and healthy. Absolutely. But like we said, not everybody can do that. What's best for that one person out there might not be the best for somebody else. The absolute best thing for Dorian to grow was lifting the way he lifted. And
yeah,
then the absolute best way, which was the opposite for like someone like Jay Cutler, that was the absolute best for him. So if they had a coach, say if you had the guy that was Dorian did most stuff himself, but say he had somebody that was pushing that way and that was his preference. If he tried to push that same preference for Jay, you wouldn't have got Jay.
of
That's
course.
that's the problem.
Of course.
Um,
And th this is why I think you are a great coach. And for example, guys like, I don't know, I speak with Stefan Kinzel last time, and he's also a great coach just because he utilized everything just like you, based on the people, but he has his style. For example, he's a lower protein guy, and that's well known. That doesn't matter that some of his guys probably eat a lot of protein because
mm,
everyone is different. But I am
yeah,
asking about your style because I don't believe that there is a coach who hasn't have a style because we
yeah,
all everyone thinks in some sort of way. So I would love to my guys do this. If it works, great. If don't, you have to change maybe everything. Turn it
yeah, yeah,
upside down. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I'm in total agreement with that.
So we talked about the cardio. What about the cardio in the off season? Do you like it? Do you like to prescribe it to everyone based on, for example, heart health, or do you think it's just a waste of calories or
No,
timing
no,
or
no.
something?
It's absolutely beneficial. Again, it comes down to that person's activity level, during the day, cardiovascular health, their metabolism, sometimes I'll utilize it to push so they can actually eat more food. But it's definitely beneficial. I would like most people to do a little, just a tiny bit, even if it's a 10-minute walk, in the morning to get things kind of going. But I'll have some guys, their job is extremely active, and so I don't have to. If I was to push cardio on them, it'd be a little too much, and it would just burn up what we need, to grow. But for heart health and stuff, yeah, a little bit in there if they're not too active. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you have to take into account, do they need this just to stay a little sharper? Are they one of these guys that's going to get a little soft regardless? Is this going to help jumpstart their metabolism for the day?
So let's say it's still me, a guy who
Yeah.
just want to be in a different class weight, and I am a online coach. So I am sitting throughout the day doing nothing. But I, like you see, I have a treadmill and my bicycle here. So, uh, how much cardio would you like me to do
In the off season,
in the
again,
off
if
season?
everything's
Yes,
firing, yeah, if off season everything's firing perfectly, just to you know keep cardiovascular health. Maybe we'd start off just with maybe 12, 15 minutes in the morning. Nothing crazy at all, just
every
low
day.
intensity. Not every day, not every day. Maybe just like 4 or 5 times a week. But of course, sometimes I'll have guys where they're like, okay, uh, I have this job 3 days a week where I'm in a warehouse and I'm just running around. I'm like, do not do cardio on that day. And then I'll have, and maybe the other 4 days he's like, yeah, but on those days, bro, I'm not even moving. I'm just laying around. Maybe that day I'll say, well, hey, go take your dog on a walk. Stay a little active. So you stay a little healthier on those days. But sometimes people do too much cardio and they don't grow in the off season.
Yeah,
Then
of course.
and then the other end of the spectrum is you have other guys that should be doing just a little bit to stay sharper, and they don't want to do it, and they think that the magical prep is going to fix everything at the end. I think that it plays a role, but again, it needs to be methodical for that person.
Oh, okay. So, can we talk a little bit about the PEDs in the off season? How do you like to structure that? What kind of PEDs you like to use? Because there's a trend right now, for example, to use a DHT derivatives in the off season, more than, for example, like a nandrolone or something like that, or like a test derivatives like EQ or something like that. So, how about the PEDs and how high you like to go with your guys? I know it depends, but we're not gonna talk milligrams because that's obviously a person dependent. But
Yeah, yeah.
do you think that you have to run more in the off season or in the contest prep? Because I was talking with John Jewett, and he was more about uh, like, keeping higher amounts of PEDs in the off season because this is when the growth really happening, and it lowers when it's contest prep because he thinks that you don't have to use that much to keep your muscle.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Me neither, but
Yeah, and you also want to preserve what you have while you're in a deficit. And when you're on the leaner side, certain chemicals that you're not using in the off season are going to be complementary to the look, and they're going to enhance it, to give that grainy, crazy, dry wood look. So it's like I don't, yeah, I don't agree with that at all.
so what would be
Like
what would be your preferable stack? More like a test nandrolone or more like a test and DHT, or it's highly depends on the individual and what he
it's
tolerates.
when you're getting into medications, it's treated just as equally if not more important than the food. I mean, these are medications, and so it's like, again, when that person signs up with me, they fill out that bio form, so I get to know everything. What have they used in the past? What are they currently doing? How are they responding to these things? Have they had bad reactions? I mean, beyond just hormonally, PIP, everything else around this. How are they actually responding to this in whole? Their blood work, their lipids. Some people like to utilize certain things, but then you look at their blood work and you're like, dude, you can't use this. This just fucks you up. But again, if we're talking about a person that's healthy and everything like that, um, and they're in good shape, everything's firing perfectly, you know, maybe some testinate or some testcipionate, maybe some primo, maybe some EQ along with it. A lot of guys get anxiety with the Bolden on, so maybe not so much there, just a little more of the EQ there for performance, and maybe again pushing the appetite. The primo, less water, putting on lean tissue, obviously having the test as the main base always, to keep things in a really good anabolic state. Um, But again, as far as dosages, of course, it depends on the person. But I'll have some guys that just are remarkable with using some Deca, and then I'll have other guys that are like, dude, I get anxiety, I get too much water retention, erectile dysfunction. It just depends. Me personally, when I competed, I never used much steroids. I was always very big on growth hormone and insulin, and a lot of people know that. Like I didn't. The most test I ever used was 300 milligrams of prop. Hani was my coach, for years, and that's what worked for me is just using. I couldn't take saucing on like my buddies. I wish I could have. I would get anxiety. I couldn't take D-ball. I couldn't take Deca. I was using like 300 milligrams of prop, couple hundred milligrams of EQ, and for whatever reason, I could use a ton of Anadrol, and it worked great. But my main thing is I was using a lot of pharmaceutical grade growth hormone, serostim,
Yeah.
genotropins, and I was really messing with the insulin, pretty intensely.
So let's says what's your preferable stack? So test go as high as the guys tolerate, and then some anabolic like
I
added to that, or do you like to keep your anabolics higher than the testosterone based?
yeah, when you say tolerate, sometimes guys will say like, man, I feel great, I can use this amount of test. But when it comes to their blood work, it's like, well, yeah, you feel great, but your liver doesn't. You know what I'm saying? Your liver and kidneys aren't reflecting that. So it's like, uh, is this really beneficial? You're
But
gaining this much, but
for me, it means that the guy is not tolerated. I assuming that by tolerated we take into consideration everything, so the blood work
oh,
as
okay, yeah,
well.
that the person's
Yeah,
responding great. Oh,
if for
okay.
example he needs 3 grams of test and his labs
Yeah,
is
that's
okay, for me it's okay. For me it's okay. For me
yes,
it's not
yeah,
much.
yeah, that's yeah. God, geez, I've never had a guy use that much.
Me neither.
No, that's a lot. No, if everything, like you said, internally and everything is great, again, titrating up. If the guy is responding and he's just mutating, off of 500 test, leave it there. There's no reason to
Of
bump it.
course.
And I notice, and I'm a huge believer in this. Coming back to styles, when you're getting into hyperplasia, when you're getting into actually breaking past genetic barriers, the steroids are only going to do so much. That's where you get into growth hormone and Increlex, things like that. That's where you get into actually multiplying and pushing these cells to their full. It's I notice more and more a lot of guys that come to me sometimes they're on crazy doses. And I usually back them off. I just had a pro that just hired me yesterday, and we went over the stuff on the phone, and I said, dude, I'm cutting your stuff down less than half, like literally. I said, this is not going to create anything more. This is actually creating toxicity inside of your body where things are just clouded at this point, and you're not going because he's in contest prep, and I'm like, it's gonna create more bad than good. Let's and so and he was surprised. He's like, wow, I didn't know, and I was like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but you know why I'm asking? Because there's many coaches that's just bullshitting people, telling them that you don't have to run this much or stuff like that. I don't believe in that. I believe that you have to run as much as you have to run. If it's 500 mgs of test and 350 milligrams of NPP, that's okay. If it's
Yeah,
500 grams of test and 200 grams of tren and 200 grams of NPP and 1500 grams of like a milligrams of boldenone, and it's summing up to 8 grams, and you are great on that, stays on that.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, no,
so as
absolutely no. I
much
mean,
as you need as and as little as is enough.
Yeah, no, I'm in total agreement with that. Yeah, any of the guys out there, I mean, if you used to watch the videos with me and Boston and Leo, I mean, like, I'm not a fan of fake coaches. I'm really
Yeah,
not a fan of them, and it's a joke. And red flags are, when a guy says, you should do this in the off season, or you should do this during contest prep. It's like there's so many different body types out there.
of course.
It's you, a guy should take this amount of test. That's just absolute crazy. And I always tell people again, another analogy is going to a doctor and saying, "What's your favorite medication?" They would say, "What are you talking about?" It depends on the individual. It depends on the situation. It's like we don't have a favorite approach. It's whatever approach works best for that person, utilizing it and monitoring it. But yeah, it's case by case.
Of course.
Absolutely, yeah. It's whatever that if that person can get by and with I have some guys on TRT that they're using a lot of GH and insulin, not moderate insulin, a lot of GH, and they're growing more than they ever have, and they're healthier than they ever have been,
Yeah.
because their anabolics are so low.
Yeah, you know, I'm the kind of guy who are not bullshitting people. So I
Yeah,
believe that my podcast is the only one that's we are telling the truth. So if I
yeah,
speaking with a coach and I hear that he is not like he's not telling me the truth or I not believe it, I just raise my hand because I am not gonna bullshitting my people because
yeah,
I don't believe in that. You have your own brain. And if you willing to sacrifice your life because everything we use is gonna shorten your life. This is how it is. It's not maybe, it's for sure. It's just how much. You
yeah,
can die having by 30 or you can die by 70 by natural cause. But you have to choose yourself. But bullshitting people is not my style of
yeah,
doing anything. So if the guy comes to me and he needs a lot, we're gonna talk and I'm gonna tell him we're gonna try this. Are you willing to do this? If he is willing to do this, we're gonna do this. So this is how it works, and I think that this is how it's supposed to work. This is why I am not working with people that are not age enough, because if you are not like a fully grown man, you just can't decide for yourself. So,
yeah,
so this is what I believe. And let's talk about GH because I know from Stuart that you are big on GH, and I love GH as well. So, how much for you is good starting point, and how high you like to go? Assuming that the guy is
yeah,
tolerating it well, so it's
yeah,
not like I'm pinning a 5 IU and I my blood sugar is
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, yeah.
yes, everything is
Um,
fine. I can tolerate as much as you told me to take.
if it's pharmaceutical, for a guy, that's 220. Again, going back to that scenario, Uh, as long as he's healthy, blood sugar's good. He's not experiencing any crazy carpal tunnel where it's disrupting his lifts, it's disrupting his sleep. Everything's just smooth. And, pharmaceutical, minimum 6 to 8 IUs. I mean, if he really wants to go to that next level, if you titrate up, there's other methods of, keeping that blood sugar in check so you can continue the growth hormone, little, baby dose of Lantus, keep things in check so you can continue titrating up. But I mean, guys at that top level, I mean, they're that's their bread and butter. I mean, guys that are making crazy gains and have that certain look where you can tell they went way past their genetics, they opened the gates, for new growth. But some guys, not everybody can get pharmaceutical. Some of these guys, a lot of guys are getting the generic stuff. The generic stuff is decent too, but I notice it's not in the same it's not the same level as the pharmaceutical.
Yeah, so how high you'll be go? I am not gonna lie, I'm tell straight as much as you afford.
Yeah, yeah. When I was using it, I would go up, the highest I went was like, I think 14 or 15 I used. Sometimes I forget. I think I might have did 16 for, a few weeks, which was pretty crazy. That was during prep. Some of my guys, my bigger guys, guys that are at least, 260, 270, and I'm talking in really good shape. I mean, they should be on, well, I shouldn't say should. If everything is healthy, I would like to see them, on at least 10 IUs a day, if that's their choice of continuing growth.
Yeah.
And if they're healthy and, they don't have anything, any health issues, nothing benign, going on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. 10 is I'm running right now, but I would really love to go 15 if my coach allowed me to,
Are you
because
doing pharmaceutical?
no, 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 no. But our we have in Poland brand called Endogenic, and they are great. Almost everyone in Europe using it who's legit. So you probably know
Yeah,
that brand, and it's
yeah,
very very good. They tested every batch and they publish the lab works and stuff like that. So it's very very great. GH, you guys, if you wanted to, you can use my code. So you find the link down below. But yeah, it is really great, and I use it even before I work with those guys because it's seriously this one, and we have one more that is great. Those two in Poland are very very great GH, even though that's not a farm grade. It's acting like so. I believe in it very very
yeah,
well, and I am a guy who tolerates GH very very well. So I was at 15 for a couple weeks during my prep, not this prep, but the prep 2 years before I'm doing this prep myself, and I don't have any problems with carpal tunnel or my blood sugar. Obviously, because it was cutting phase and I was very
yeah,
very lean. In off season, that could be a different story, but yeah, I like GH as well as much as insulin probably. So let's talk insulin. Do you like
yeah,
to you obviously like to utilize the short acting insulin around the workout because this is like a low level competitors even doing so that's obvious. But what about the stuffs like Lantus? Because it's obviously, do you like to use it, for example, on the um, body parts that's lacking or something like that? Because it's synergistic effects with a GH upping up an IGF, even though it's
yeah.
systemic
That's
IGF.
definitely,
But yeah,
yeah, that's an option on certain days like that for that person. All these, you know, different types of insulins can be utilized in a lot of different ways. Sometimes the Lantus may just, like I said, could be utilized just to control the blood sugar, so you can titrate up, with the growth hormone.
so how do you use
Or
it then? How do you use it then? Because I'm just doing it like a 10 I use before the sleep. That's for most of my guys enough. But
yeah,
if I
yeah.
if
So
I if I wanted to use it like bumping up the high days, for example, I'm using like a 40 to 100 I use in the morning.
yeah. That's an approach. I mean, it just again depends on the person, and some of these guys are extremely sensitive with it. Some guys can run a lower dose and they're great, but as soon as they start to cross that line, they start to get soft, and I don't like that, so I'll pull
Yeah.
back. Um, and you have other guys that just stay super sharp. Their insulin sensitivity is just fantastic. And when you're in that state, you have so many different options, where, okay, we just want to grow, and you're staying sharp. We're pushing the food, we're constantly shuttling nutrients all day long, uh, starting off, maybe with, for that type of guy, maybe 15, 20 IUs, of the Lantus, and working your way up to see, what that person can tolerate as long as everything is perfect. It depends on the reason they're using it, or you're trying to prioritize a certain body part. So you're really shuttling on that day. I'm not a fan of some of the other long acting like Trujillo and
No,
Levemir and those.
I
Those,
don't think
yeah,
that is a use for a long-acting insulin other than Lantus, to be honest, in
yeah.
bodybuilding.
Lantus is great. As far as the fast acting ones, I love Humalog, Novolog. Apidra is super
I
fast.
I love Novorapid because it's probably the best with the GH. Is the best synergics when it comes to the labs at least.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, I mean, again, it depends on the person, because sometimes, somebody takes Apidra, and it hits them, and 20, 30 minutes. And you have other guys that can take a Pedra, hits them in 5 minutes. So, I've seen guys do more advanced protocols where they're even doing it intra workout, and they're just pounding the nutrients. I mean, just pounding the nutrients. The Novolog and Humalog, I would say, as far as, the faster acting ones are, kind of fit that scenario the best.
Safest, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're easy to control. I do not like Humulin R. I do not like Novolin R. But again, they are a tool, and for some people, they work great. You know,
Of course.
um, but I see most people, the faster acting insulins are easier to control, and I can tend to even utilize those, sometimes during prep and still get them crazy lean, because I can just, shock that window and then go back to fat burning. But again, it just depends.
Sorry, I just texted to my wife because it's past 9 and she have to eat. She's on the
Oh,
prep.
okay.
Yeah, so she's just gonna be somewhere out there, so doesn't matter. But okay, when it comes to the estrogen control, because this is a big topic, some guys are even think that estrogen is highly anabolic, and right now we know it isn't. Obviously, you need some estrogen to produce IGF and stuff like that, and it is in a sort of way anabolic, but it is not equals as high as you tolerate just because it's
Yeah.
anabolic. Yeah. So how high you like to keep your guys on the off season when it comes to the estrogen?
Yeah. No, I mean, you pretty much said it perfectly. It's hormonally, you do need a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes people, make certain statements. But yeah, I don't agree with that. Yeah, I like to keep it a little on the lower side. But again, I mean, it depends on that individual, because like a lower side to one person sometimes is like to another guy where they're like, oh dude, man, I can just tell, like, I'm just like, this is way too low, like I'm feeling off, or you have a guy who's at the higher end of normal, and they're like, oh dude, this is way too much, I'm experiencing this and this. But I'm never one of those guys, like if I'm writing up somebody's cycle after reviewing their stuff and they're in a healthy state, and people are under the assumption of, oh, I need to utilize an anti-estrogen just because I'm on a cycle. I don't agree with that. Again, it's a tool that should be, involved if it's needed. But sometimes, I'll send over their cycle, the information, and they're like, I don't understand. Where's my Arimidex? Where's my anastrozole? Where's this? I'm like, why would we add that in? Just because, you read that on a forum? I'm like, if it's not needed, it's not needed. I got your lab work here. I reviewed everything you've done, past and present. Let's start here, and then maybe just keep a couple of those things on standby, and we'll see how you feel. We can adjust those things according to your look, how you're feeling internally, and if there's anything that gets out of scope, then we can pull labs.
Yeah, of course. I'm a little bit different because I'm more like a high test guy, so I like to keep the testosterone at the highest, even at the
Yeah,
beginning. So I've always write it down the EIs at the beginning of the working with a new guy. But then I tell him to make his lab works in 10 to 14 days, and based on that, we cap it or lower it or upper it or just get rid of if it's not needed. But I like it better to, even if his labs tends to be a little bit lower, we can easily up it by using even HCG. That's not a problem. But if it's going to be too high, we have to control it, bump it down, and sometimes it's problematic because it's a little harder to manage, I think. So I like it that way more. But so what range you like to kept it? Because for example, in Poland, the norm is 10 to 44 is like a norm. So I like to kept somewhere between 20 to 60, but sometimes 80 if the guy is like better sex drive or something like that, because some guys are just on a higher test. If the estrogen is too low, they have to they tend to have like a less sex drive.
yeah, yeah. Again, I'll have guys where their blood work, say they're in the range of normal, say right in the middle, say they're like 35 or something, but you know they feel horrible. So
Obviously,
I'm like, okay, that's in, whatever their window of looking at things in the lab, but you feel like shit, so you need this. So again, it comes down to the individual. What there's the the documented, medical side of things, and then there's the side of things, the internal thing of what the guy is feeling and his reaction to his hormonal environment. So again, kind of like what you're saying is, starting with an approach and then sliding it, here or there based on where the guy feels the best and is healthy at the same time.
of course, of course. Okay, so do you like to use an AI, or you are more like a let's put some master on or Primable instead guy?
Um, Off season wise, I would rather, not just stack up other things that could be toxic. I would rather, if he's having an estrogen issue, just to add an AI. Do you see what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
it's it's much simpler instead of just stacking on milligrams again. Contest time, it's a bit different. Some of those things could be more utilized, and more of those compounds are implemented. uh, and I'm very big on anti-estrogens. Contest time, the majority of my guys never even touch diuretics. So I mean, it. So I like AIs a lot as long as it fits the scenario.
yeah, and I tend to see that was a trend, thinking that it's healthier to use Masteron, like a gram of Masteron to gram of tests, just to keep your estrogen in range. But I think it's shittier to your lipids than use, for
Yes,
example, half milligrams of Arimidex, because it's nothing, to be honest. So
exactly.
so I've always tends to lean into an I, but even those guys who was telling the other guys that it's better to use the DHT derivative, right now is changing their mind because the new studies comes out. So this is the funny thing with like a scientific approach to the bodybuilding, because guys in a seven, maybe not 70s, because 70s they don't even know what AI is, but 80 late 80s, 90s to 2000s, they everyone's use it, and that was a norm, and everyone was fine. But then people starts to use like a Primobolan in a high, high dosages just to keep the estrogen lower. That was absurd for me always.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Much easier, just like you said, just to add in a little bit of an AI and go from there, and check under the hood and how the person's responding.
Definitely. Okay, so managing the blood pressure with your guys on the off season, do you like to use RAB or beta blockers and stuff like that just to keep them uh, like safer, just not let the heart overgrowth and stuff like that? Or do you not touching this stuff and just,
Sometimes, again, that can be utilized. I mean, I don't always like to rely on that, though. That's the whole thing. I would rather
of
have the
course,
guy maybe just cut back a little on his sodium and do a little bit more cardio, or, and sometimes that happens because the guy's so heavy and he's having sleep apnea and it just everything's a wreck internally. I would rather manage those things first before just grabbing a medication, which those things, help some people, but I'd rather go the natural way first.
oh yeah, of course, of course. This is what I wanted to hear from you. So yeah, okay, man. I have transition into the to the prep mode right now, and it's probably gonna took a while. So if you are not having 3 hours, we are probably not gonna manage to do the whole podcast today
What
because
time is it right now?
in Poland,
No, no. What time is it? Yeah, you're Poland.
yeah,
You're what,
is
9 hours ahead?
I think so. I think so. We doing it for 1.5 hour right now, and
Let's
we are
see.
not even in the middle.
I think we could go for another hour. I might miss a couple of phone calls, but that's okay. I can always reschedule. We're already kind of in the mix here. But yeah, I could go for another hour.
Okay, so let's try the transition into the prep mode. So you like to do some time off, like a deload, regards to training before the prep, or do you think it's best to go straight into the contest prep, or like a holding phase? Do you like to do it?
If it fits that person, yeah. I mean, because sometimes, we get to that point where we're into prep we're beginning prep and they're like, oh man, I know it's prep, but I just feel beat up. And I'm like, okay, well, let's deload. And sometimes that deload doesn't just mean in the gym. Maybe it means with the nutrition as well. Maybe let's just take a break. Maybe let's lower protein this week. Maybe let's lower the cardio. Maybe let's cut down the volume in the gym. Let's cut down the sets. Let's cut down let's raise the reps a little bit so we're not just destroying your nervous system before we're getting into prep. But um it just depends on that person, but I like to have them in that good state with everything when we're transitioning into prep. And sometimes those deloads can happen in the middle of off season. Sometimes it can be a matter of stress too, of stress management, of the guy's going through a divorce and it's like, dude, you can't change that you are going through a divorce right now and going through court. But but if you continue thinking that you can train every day like this, you're just going to get wrecked. So let's maybe back off here, because you going to the gym is actually adding more stress to you physically and mentally. So I mean, there could be a deload, put in at that time. It just depends. Or again with nutrition, sometimes again, you'll see guys eating just a ton of food, and then digestive wise their body's just like, whoa, back up. I've been running efficiently for a long time, just like a car. I need to pull over, and it's okay to pull over. It's okay to pull over. You do it with chemicals, you do it in between sets, and you should do it with food too.
Yeah, that was my second question when it comes to PEDs. Do you like to do a health phase, like uh, I don't know, like a breach, or how do you like to call it before you start the prep with the guy, or do you
Yeah.
think that yeah, okay,
Yeah, I absolutely like to do a health phase before. Absolutely. Yeah, always, always. Yeah. Yeah, if possible, yeah, always. Of course their blood work will help dictate that, how they're feeling, everything else, how they're looking. Because you'll have some guys again, their blood work's perfect, but you can just tell their body's tired. It's like, I don't need you tired. We're just starting prep. So, let's maybe take a few days off from the gym. Taking a couple days off can do more than anything sometimes.
so you basically like to make your guys completely fresh before you start the prep.
I think that they perform best that way, yes, but sometimes that's not,
An option,
you
yeah.
don't, yeah, it's not an option sometimes. Sometimes, they're bridging in between shows, or something happened with their sponsor and they had to, do this show instead of that show, and we got to
Yeah.
jump in. So it's like, okay, how can we cheat the system here? How can we do a quick detox, get labs, jump in here? And and there's other ways, like even when my guys are quote clean off of steroids, my guys are still growing, because then you go to your other tools in your box and say, okay, well, now let's jack up GH. We can maybe play with some insulin. Can you get Increlex? Can we play with peptide IGF? You should be always constantly moving forward, just switching tools.
Okay. So that's probably obvious, but I have to ask, do you tell your guys to do a blood works before the competition prep?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I always like them
just
to
for
get. Yeah.
reference, do you like to make it also during the contest prep, just to
Sometimes
check
I
it
do.
out?
Yeah. To document, sometimes I do. Yeah. Especially guys that are very involved on their side, where they want to know what's going on, under the hood. And then we can always compare to after the prep, like, what did this look like? When we were running this and you were, under this amount of stress and you were 6 weeks out. Yeah, obviously it's not going to be as pretty when you're
Yeah,
clean, but at least we have something to reflect on
of
you
course.
know and we were at the highest point with this oral. Wow, you can get away with this. This was managed well internally.
Okay. So let's say as we entered into the competition prep, how much time you like to have with your clients for the whole prep? But because some trainees, so coaches like to have the set plan for a 12, 16, 20, or 20 plus weeks, and this is their base. I know it's gonna base mostly of how well the guy is looking, because if it's
Yeah.
fat, obviously you're not gonna do it for the 8 weeks. But what would be the preferable way to do it, and for how long?
For someone that I've never worked with and they're in
Yes.
good shape, 20 weeks minimum to make sure
He
everything is
he
perfect.
he he is in a perfect shape because you are
Yeah,
making his
he's
whole
in.
off season.
Oh, if I was already with him for off season.
He we doing it. We were in the off season.
Yeah,
Then we
so
do the health days, and
yeah,
I am
so
fresh and ready.
yeah. If I know the guy can get absolutely pilled in say 12 weeks, then maybe I'll start the prep. I always do a little extra time, maybe at 14, 15 weeks, because I always allow, and I think most people should, is allow for the things that you can't account for. What if the guy gets sick? What if there's a chemical that he can't get? What if the show changes a week early? Then you always have that safety net of that time. Um, but if the person, he just signed up with me, he's in good shape, usually 20 weeks. If there's a guy where he just signed up with me and is a little soft, then I will tend to go 20, 24 weeks to make sure everything's perfect, because I like my guys ahead of schedule, and I like them stage ready a minimum of 7 to 14 days out, so that way we can let the body relax at the end. But Yeah, I mean, it could be anywhere, from 12 to 24, just depending
Yeah,
on
but
that person.
basically you like to keep your extra time for the guys always.
Yeah, yeah. If you have worked with the individual 10 shows, still always have an extra few weeks there. It's not going to hurt. Especially, as they're a seasoned competitor, they're not going to mind it. And they're going to definitely value that extra time if they get the flu, if they get the cold, if there's a chemical they can't get. And we've all been there where we're
Of
freaking
course.
out because our buddy said that, he's going to get us this and this. We didn't get it. So that helps a lot.
So how's the training change in the contest prep, and if it changed at all? Or do you
I
believe that you
believe
should stay on the same training program?
Um, I believe I'm a big believer in the style that builds muscle is the style that keeps muscle.
Let's
When I see certain
yeah,
guys and they transition into prep and then they're like, "Well, I built all this muscle lifting this way, just the meat and potato way of barbell, dumbbell, Ronnie Coleman, 8 to 10 reps. Oh, now I'm going to go into contest prep and now I'm going to go to 15 to 20 reps and do a bunch of cables. I just see their body just fade. I
yeah.
I think it's pointless. I think you should try to train the same way the entire time. Of course,
Uh,
there's going to be other variables of maybe more glute work, and of course, when you get leaner, you're not going to be able to maybe lift as much. So you need to listen to your body and be very instinctive because your body doesn't know what a number is. As long as your body is, if you're used to going, 100% intensity to failure at 80 pounds on a certain lift. If you're deep into contest prep and you're still going 100% on that lift that maybe at 60 pounds, that's okay because you're still going to failure.
of course. And I am a big believer in that as well, just because I have so many guys that wanted to change the exercise schedule and the rep range and stuff like that. And I told them always that it's not a good idea at this moment. We're gonna change the plan in the new off season or rebound or any elsewhere, but not contest prep or cutting phase. So
Yeah,
how you like to manage the calorie deficit? Do you like to jump straight into a big deficit or do it very slowly?
very slowly, very slowly. I want to make sure that when we go into prep that you're eating a ton of food because it's a lot easier when you're starting higher on the hill. Some of these guys that are not eating enough food and they're already, towards the bottom of the hill, you don't have a lot to go from there. I mean, if you're eating a ton of food and you just start to shave off little bits when it's needed, I tend to see that works way better than carb cycling, way better than doing tons of cardio and, all the, the chemical, auxiliary types of things. Uh, it, that's why again the off season is so important. That is prep. You need to build yourself up to that point in a good condition, and you have a lot of options going into the show.
So how do you manage it? What would be the first thing you're gonna cut from the diet? The fats, the carbs, or maybe adding the fat burners, or maybe upping cardio? What would be the first thing you like
Uh,
to do?
yeah, what I would like to do is not jump into the fat burners yet. I would like to start to pull away with the fats a little bit because that those carbs are gonna is like throwing logs on the fire. I want to keep that going. So the first thing I would do is pull away on the fats.
Okay, okay. So how about the PEDs change in the contest prep? Do you like it change it at the beginning or first, for example, six to 12 weeks is staying on the same PEDs as the off season? Because you told me that at the beginning we are gonna to do breach slash health days. So we lowers my PEDs. So how do you manage it? Raise it up again through to the contest season, not contest season, but off season level or what?
Yeah, preferably, yeah. I would rather go back to that level. I don't think that you should just go super high again. Your body doesn't need it at that point. If you've already got, your kind of deload, go back to where you were before. And sometimes even not even going up that high, maybe just going titrating up to that point, you know, because your cells aren't as saturated. Your receptors are gonna be more responsive. Uh, so yeah, definitely not going, into a high phase, going back to, more than if it's TRT, if we did a complete detox, with PCT, depending on what the person, preferred and health and everything, a complete clean out, then, starting off with, a low range and building up.
Okay. Okay, so what would be the point in a contest prep you changing the compounds to a more drier? Obviously, it's just a
Yeah,
word.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I've had some guys run saucing on to the day of the show, and I've had other guys where, maybe we
Yeah, yeah,
start off with
that's
compounds
obvious,
like
but
that, and then we work our way to prop and suspension or just prop. I mean, it just
preferable way,
depends.
preferable way.
Preferable way that I usually
The
see
perfect
most.
scenario, perfect
Yeah,
scenario.
perfect scenario, and what most people usually respond to that I see is, starting off with the slower ester, and then, folding into things. But your body has to be in a certain position, though, also. Sometimes when guys come to me from other coaches, I've seen from quote top coaches, that are absolute frauds that have their entire cycle written out all the way to the show. And to me, that's the most dangerous, craziest thing I've ever seen in my life, where it says,
Yeah.
you're going to take this, you're going to switch to this. I'm like, how are they even going to know? That's crazy. But your body has to be at a certain point. What, like, I'll have some guys that are like, I'm used to starting, Tren at this point. I'm like, why would I start Tren at that point? You're not lean enough. It's not going to be complementary. What is the point? You have to also have a certain type of look to introduce certain compounds, but in a perfect scenario, slower esters and then working into the faster stuff, switching things up as far as, the source of tests, folding in, the master owns trends, winnies, that type of stuff.
I have to ask because this is something that's gonna brag at me. Do you really believe that esters are gonna make a difference, or this is just in case we have to rid of the compound quicker? Because to be honest, I don't believe that test probe is different than probe that enantate or cypionate, especially because cypionate and enantate for me is the same shit.
Yeah, but the look is different though. If you're running cypionate, you're running prop, and the amount of mig for mig is different.
Yeah,
Anabolically in your system, it's different.
but this is a tiny differences when it comes to the
Yeah, but those
if
tiny differences make the see, that's the thing though. That's giving you a clear picture of where your physique is actually at. Some of these guys that run Saucidon because they think that all the tests is the same, and they get down and they think it's just water, and then they find out it's not just water. Do you see what I'm saying? So, and there is a relationship between fat and water. A drier physique and a leaner physique is everything's going to pop more, as we know. So somebody using again, Saucidon, and that guy, the only reason I allowed Saucidon is because they were able to maintain a super dry physique the whole time. They didn't have a lot of water. But you have those guys that make those mistakes that think, okay, all the test is the same. I'm going to run Saucidon, and then at the end, I'm going to throw the Hail Mary and then drop all this water. I don't believe in that. And there's also the equation of, your skin as well. Sometimes when people drop all that water, their skin isn't going at the same rate, and so they have a little bit of loose skin. So there's also benefits of keeping things a little tighter within certain phases of prep.
and do you really notice this? Because I see the correlation in the look, switching to the shorter esters, obviously, but you also closer into the show, you probably taking a lot more DHT derivatives. so your tends to be more drier because of the less estrogenic effect and prolactin effect and stuff like that, especially if you're not running like a tren yet, because we all know that tren can hold a little bit water due to the progesteronic effect and stuff like that. So maybe it's not the esters. Maybe it's just that your guy is just leaner and uses more DHT derivatives and stuff like orals and the weenie, the oxandrolone and stuff like that. Maybe it's this. Because to be honest, I am not gonna argue with you just because you are obviously more experienced than me and you work with thousands of guys. But I am just wondering, how do you recognize the difference between the ester and just being closer to the show?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Of course, because we're speaking so broadly. You know what I'm saying? Like
Of
there's
course.
a lot of variables there. I mean, like because sometimes I'll have a guy start off the beginning of prep and he's using mastenanthate. You know what I'm saying? And then yeah, so
Yeah,
and then
because
switching over.
no, no, I wanted to say, I ask you specifically because I know there's somewhere out there the guy watching in the off season who's just eat a whole pizza, and in his mind, he's, oh, I'm gonna switch into a probe because I'm holding the water. You know what I
No,
say?
no, no,
Yes,
no, 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 no,
yeah.
no, 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 no,
This is why
no,
I'm
no,
asking.
no. I'm talking about common that I see a lot. If it's a perfect scenario, usually the esters will change. They'll get a denser, harder look, and it's easier to assess where the physique is at with less water. That's what I'm talking about. Of course, there's
Yeah,
other variables with DHT and everything else like you're talking about. I'm in complete agreement. But of course, I'm I'm trying to speak very broadly,
of
which I
course.
don't, because I'm so used to being OCD and specific with everything.
Yeah,
The person, it could be completely different. Again, I'll have a guy run Saucet on all the way to the show if that's what works. That's fine with me.
of course.
It's easier to assess the physique. And I also notice they feel a bit better with less water. And again, those other variables that I spoke about with your skin and different things like that, that is beneficial to keep things a little tighter.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay. So how about the GH when it comes to the contest prep? Do you like to bump it up just because it's probably gonna help with the burning fat, or maybe do it something with that? So for example, in the off season, you shoot the whole dose before the workout with an insulin,
No,
and
no, 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 no. No, I don't. I
why is
believe. I
that?
mean, these are temporary hormonal pulses. Even in the off season, if you're using 10 IUs of GH, you should not be snapping that whole thing one time. This needs to be spread out so you get all these synthetic pulses. So you know, in a perfect scenario, again, if a guy was using 10 IUs, I would like him to do 2 IUs 5 times a day,
Okay.
and keep that the same even in contest prep. If they can use more growth hormone during prep and use higher grade, pharmaceutical, whatever, absolutely. That's going to, again, help burn fat, sustain the muscle that they have, give them a fuller, rounder look. But if they can take more with the GH and health is still within range, absolutely. But I noticed with some guys, again, I'm not a big diuretic person. I 99% of my guys don't even touch diuretics. The most I've ever had a guy use is a quarter of a diazide. So it's like I would rather pull out certain things or lower the dose as we get closer, so I don't have to do the Hail Mary at the end, and it's less stress on the body and mentally for that athlete. But again, shit, man. I mean, I've had guys that are pilled and dry. If I can run the injectables to the day of the show, why change it? Because if that's contributing to their best look, why take that piece of the puzzle out? I
Of
like to run
course.
them as close as possible.
Of course. So, what's the best time to incorporate the fat burners like Clen, Joachim, GH fragment of growth hormone and stuff like that, in your opinion?
If the person needs it, if they're going to start off with a baby dose of Clen, of course, fasted, which I usually tend to suggest it. You'll hembine again, synergistically with the other fat burners, that are incorporated in that window of time. The frag is always a great tool.
I
Some
love it.
guys, yeah, yeah. It's funny because some guys just swear by it, and some guys are like, "Oh, I saw no difference." But
I think it depends if you have legit fragments.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. It depends on the source you're getting your stuff, and the benefits that you got could have been from that, and you're not giving the credit. You're giving it to another component of your
Of,
prep.
of course.
Yeah, fragments always good. I mean, just it depends on the person. Sometimes I don't even have them start off with Clen, maybe just a baby dose of ephedrine, or maybe they don't even use caffeine in the off season, and maybe we just start to incorporate a little bit of caffeine. Maybe even if it's a plain cup of coffee or some green tea.
I am just in this contest prep because I am a week and a half after my show right now. I stopped using caffeine, and I told that was the best decision I've ever made, to be honest, because of amount of stimulants I think we took during the off season. Stopping the caffeine is the greatest idea because my sleep improves a lot. I have zero like cravings, zero appetite effect, problems. So I was never hungry and stuff like that. So just improving your sleep is the best fat burner, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
sometimes less is more in this case,
yeah,
because as we
yeah,
all
yeah.
know, and as the probably favorite saying of the Mila Salchev is more is always more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I've seen that happen too, just lowering the stress, getting more sleep, making sure your food timing is perfect, being meticulous with your food. That's the other thing is, sometimes before adding a fat burner, I'll go over the guy's stuff again, comb through it and I ask them, okay, what are you using? What condiments? And then I find out they're using ketchup. I find out they're using this or that. They're using salsa on every meal. They've been using barbecue sauce, and I'm like, dude, we don't even need a fat burner yet. You just need to clean up your food,
to be,
or your cardio, you're barely even moving. So, I mean, those approaches are always the best, until you actually need it.
of course, of course. So tell me, do you like more cardio and more food or less cardio and less food? Like a perfect scenario, remember.
Perfect scenario, more food, less cardio.
And if it's not possible, would you
If it,
like to your guy doing a more activity and eat more or opposite?
I mean, again, some guys out there, by giving them more food, stokes the flames, and keeps everything going even better. But there's other guys that really need to get in that deficit. I mean, they really
Of
need to get in
course.
that deficit. And I want to keep the muscle. That's the other thing. If we're strictly talking, contest prep, it's like, yeah, we could, lower the food, but I could just have you do a little more cardio to burn. That might work for that person, or I mean, it just depends, or switching up the sources of their food. Okay, you've been doing chicken now. I'm a big fan of using a lot of white
Fish.
fish,
Yeah,
and there's a certain look you get to that, and the best of the best, whenever they switch to all fish, they get a look that you just can't get. It's just fantastic. You go back to the best look of Kevin Levrone. Oh yeah, that year he ate 8 pounds of flounder. You go to the best look of Jay. You go to the best look of Ronnie. You know, it was
Yeah,
incorporating more of the leaner meats. Um, but yeah, I would like to keep hold on to the food as much as we can.
of course. This is
That's why I
this.
like to start off really high, because then if you just sliver off little bits, I mean, you're going to get leaner and leaner, and you're still eating a decent amount, even when you're deep into prep.
I am. I don't know if you know. This is a crazy word I say, but I record a podcast with Stu, and I call it "Less talk, more white fish."
You call it what?
Less talk, more fish, because of
Yeah.
your food choices. Okay, so do you prefer to do steady state cardio if you have to, or HIIT or counting steps is something that you sometimes use as well?
Yeah. The activity level outside of, the gym is important. Again, it comes back to how physical is this guy's job? Is he, a delivery guy? Is he running around all day long? If you add that extra cardio, is it going to, ruin his physique? You got to take that in account. It's always best to start off with low intensity. It's not just because it's better to preserve muscle, but also, your joints and everything else. I don't believe in just diving in the deep end right off the bat.
Okay. So I think that was crystal clear. So
Yeah.
next question. Cheat meals or refeeds, or it's strictly depends on the individual, because I know that your preferable way is more like a cheat meals, I think, because uh, or maybe I'm wrong, but what would be your preferable way? Maybe let's say that way.
You're talking during contest prep?
Of course, we are talking
Yeah,
about the
okay.
contest
Yeah.
prep
So
right now.
if the person really needs it, maybe things are slowing down. We need to stoke the flames, or maybe they need it because things are just flying too crazy and we need to, take a step back, maybe they just need that refreshment mentally and they're already perfectly on schedule or ahead. Um, of course, during contest prep, it's going to be way more controlled than in the off season. Even in the off season, these refeeds are controlled, but it needs to be OCD, during prep. Down to, okay, if you're going to have a refeed, this is the exact amount of red meat you're going to eat. This is the exact amount of carbs you're going to eat from, the potatoes or the rice or whatever. I want you to eat it at this time of the day. Yeah, all of those variables are controlled.
Okay. So basically, it's very person dependent and
Absolutely.
depend on the situation. Okay. Uh, so have you got a more than 20 minutes, like a 20 to 30 minutes more?
Yeah.
Okay.
I I pretty
So
much already I'm gonna have to just switch around some phone calls. So yeah, I'm
okay,
already deep into
because
conversation,
I
so it's
think we're
fine.
gonna finish it. We're gonna finish it
Yeah,
because
no
I
problem.
have 14 more questions and there's a quick one. So let's start the peak week, or if some says the hell week. First of all, do you believe that peak week is something magical? I know the answer to the question, but I wanted to some guys hear that from you.
Um, uh, they say that you said that they've heard that I believe it's magical.
No, 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 no. Do you believe it's a magic week? Because some guys
No.
think that they are fat, but this is the peak week. They're gonna
Oh yeah, yeah, no,
magically
no, no, no.
lose everything.
You should be stage ready. Like I said, 7 to 14 days out, you should be stage ready. At that point, we should be taking stress off the body. You know,
So basically, you should be ready for the stage and then start the peak week.
you should. Yeah, and that's just to sharpen the edges on everything
Of
as far
course.
as managing, really managing. I mean, everything should be accounted for as far as your sodium and water and everything like that, and your activity and all that stuff should be completely monitored and locked in at certain numbers. And then, it should be minimum manipulations, just to sharpen things up. Sometimes people think that, again, they're going to throw a Hail Mary and clean up everything and it's a mess. Or sometimes they have everything perfect and they believe that they have to do all these different manipulations because they've read it online or they hear it on,
Yeah, right now the
they're
Instagram not helping just because you saw
it's not
the post.
what's not helping is the generic information. And I'm going to speak bluntly. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big person, and people might be offended by this, but I believe in the resume. When I'm not a guy that goes on podcasts every day and talks, my resume speaks for
Of
itself.
course.
I don't need to sit there and talk nonstop. I don't need to do any marketing. I show my work. And there's other people that have little to no clients and all they do is talk and talk. They have universities, they have mentorship, they have this, they have that. It's like, where's your clients?
So let's not be afraid to say that sometimes the
Yeah.
podcasts like that, it's actually
Well, it's just
something that
because
ruined
it's
because
such.
you saw that guys, for example, very well known educators on the YouTube that I never saw any clients, never.
Yeah, that's why I tell people it's so important, and they don't want you doing this. I've seen the emails that people have showed me where they've contacted and said, "Hey, where's your guys? You're talking constantly." I read Blue said check the resume, especially when we had our podcast a long time ago. People were just hounding them and like, show me your clients. Where's your bodybuilding clients? I mean, really hitting them up, putting them on the spot, and it was driving them crazy because it's all smoke and mirrors. Anybody can sit online and regurgitate what they read out of a book, but there's people out there that talk about building houses and the right way to build a house. Okay, now show me the houses you've built. And then the conversation ends because it's
Yeah,
much easier to take the approach of sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's pride, whatever. Of okay, I don't have any clients, but I'm now gonna say that I'm a guru and I'm going to shed my wisdom to all, and it's laughable, and the real top coaches literally laugh at it because they can tell it's so cringy. The generic information that's put out, and the upper peak of the guys that are really doing things that are really turning out physiques are like just laugh at it because they're like, these guys are saying all this stuff with such authority, but they have no clients.
yeah.
Or they have a client, one good guy, and the rest of their clients look like absolute garbage. It's that's why I tell everybody check the resume, do the digging, look at their clients. And it's a messed up thing to say, but it's really the truth. 99% of the guys out there, it's fake. It's all smoke and
Fraud. Yeah,
mirrors. And some of the perceived top gurus, you really do your digging and you find out, oh whoa, yeah, that person is really full of shit. you know and it sounds messed up, but it's the truth.
of course. This is why I like to invite guests like you because you are true with everything you do. And I wanted to be honest with people and not
Yeah.
bullshitting with the dosages and not bullshitting and telling people that it's all genetics and guys are not using anything or not bullshitting that the workout doesn't matter. You can stay in the rear five or rear three or bullshit like that. No, you have to train to failure. The rear doesn't exist. No one use it. No one who are making a progress use rear. What it even means rear? It doesn't mean that you leave your progress at the gym. the stupidest idea that I ever heard in my life. If I can
Yeah.
make five more, I do it five more, always.
Yeah. It's there's
Yeah,
a lot of bad information out there, and there's a lot of like I said, smoke and mirrors. I mean, it's for those out there that are listening, I'm not going to name names of people and stuff. All you have to do is look up their clients,
of
look who
course.
they've really, look at what they've built, not somebody that was handed to them that already looks a certain way. I'm
Or
talking
best,
who they built from beginning to end. What have they really done? How many of these guys do they have? How many of these guys like they're expressing all of their opinions about all these things, but where's the real work involved? Where are their clients? And you end up finding out with 99% of these people that it's all bullshit. It's all talk because if they stopped their whatever little thing they have going on and they just relied on purely actually developing physiques, you wouldn't even hear about them. They're just mouthpieces. And it's not that I'm not saying it in a malicious way. I'm just telling the people out there that are listening, do your research. You'll find out the answers instantly. Go to their Instagram, count their bodybuilders, ask questions. You
yeah,
have the right to ask that because they have no problem taking your money.
of course.
But so you have the right to say, where's your bodybuilders? I'm looking through your Instagram and I see nothing but pictures of you talking.
Yeah.
Where's your guys at? And in the guy's profile, it'll say, you know, uh, world renowned coach or this or that. It's like, yeah, but I don't see a single bodybuilder.
Yeah, of course. I told you that if you have 30 minutes and I already asked zero questions. So maybe we come back to the big week.
Yes, we'll come back to the
Oh
peak week.
yeah.
Don't get me
Okay.
started on the fake coaches.
Yeah, yeah. I know you like or slash hate this topic because it's annoying. Okay, so how long before the show you starts to leveling up the water and sodium with your guys? Just to make it clear, for example, you take in X amount of water a day and X amount of salt or grains of salt and stuff like that. You know what I mean, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So number one thing when you go into that week is having those things locked into certain numbers that you are completely used to, that is in your system and that's your management, that you're at, say, whatever, 8 or 9 liters a day. That's exactly what you're locked into. You're locked into 10 grams of sodium every day. It's broken up this way with this meal. But some guys, you may need to manipulate that a little bit, one variable at a time. You may want to, okay, well, let's maybe introduce some carbs, once we get a little closer midweek. Let's do that variable first to see if we even need to pull back, because sometimes adding extra carbs can help push out more water. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am just at the beginning of the peak week. So let's say we are not going to manipulate anything yet.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
the number one thing is locking down exactly where you're at. I mean, as far as your plan, like, I mean, because say if his water bounced around between 6 and 10 liters, kind of in prep. But now, once we're a week out, okay, now this is set. No, no
yeah,
less, no more. You are at this number of sodium. You're at this number of water, and then we'll watch that, for a good 2 to 3 days, and then we'll start to introduce the variable of course, I'm talking about one scenario here. I've had guys
of
where
course.
I don't even touch their water or sodium because they look perfect and that water for that individual is helping create that look. And other guys, it's like, okay, I know that I need to pull just a little bit of water, maybe control the sodium a hair while I'm introducing the carbs, or I need to have the sodium in to help those carbs stick. After we start to introduce one variable, we give it time to see how things look, and then we go to the next step if there is another variable or keeping things the same and going through with that route.
So you set the tone 7 days before the show, for example. Let's say
Yeah.
you told me to drink 9 liters of water and intake 2 grams of salt per meal 6 times a day because I have 6 meals, for example.
Hmm.
So it's 12 grams of salt.
Yeah.
So how long before the show you start to manipulating and when?
That'll depend on how they look. I have people check in so much. I mean, once people are around, 3 weeks out, they're checking in, every other day. As soon as they're about 7 to 10 days out, they check in every single day, sometimes twice a day. As soon as we get to a week out, they're checking in, sometimes at least twice a day. As soon as we get to, if we're, starting to get real close, 48 hours, sometimes it's an hour after every single meal. I watch people extremely close. As soon as they get backstage, they have to text me every 15 minutes. Um, so I'm basically there with them,
Great.
in a sense. But yeah, your body will tell us that next step as far as, okay, we got everything locked in here now. Maybe we had to drop certain injections or whatnot. Maybe we kept them in. Now we have this locked in. We have your kind of your workout set for this week, this type of rest management. Let's introduce this variable, and sometimes there's no variable. Sometimes it's like, let's hold on to this and pump up, backstage with a couple tablespoons of honey. I mean, it could be that simple.
Okay. So I am not gonna ask you about the do you cut or not the sodium or water because it's so depending on a
It's
person
different with
that, yeah,
everybody. Yeah.
I know you probably for some guys even bump up the water if they needed to, for example, if they wake up flat or something like that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's a normal thing. So I am briefly going to ask you about the diuretic use because you already said that you barely use it, but
Hmm.
if you use it, it's probably always a diazide, and if so, it's you said quarter of a diazide, yes?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's not even a diazide. Sometimes it's just the component of thiazide out of that diuretic. Sometimes it's just that by itself. The hydro part of it. But yeah, I mean that's if I have to really trim the edges. But it's that fine line. It's like I would rather have a guy at 98%, and sometimes guys will say, "Well, I want that extra 2%." They end up overshooting and everything's ruined.
Yeah,
So I would rather have them at 98% and hold there. But it's that fine, fine line. But yeah, if you are already in shape, you shouldn't have to do, like, I hear some protocols out there where I'm just blown away, like just blown away. Starting diuretic, starting aldactone 2, 3 weeks out,
yeah,
and then moving into diazide, and then moving into Lasix, and I'm like, that is absolutely insane. I wouldn't even feel comfortable doing that. Like it's
great.
just, it's you're trying to create a look that should have been done in prep.
Yeah, of course. So, what's your preferable way of carb up and how long before the show? So, what I mean by that is not maybe a food choices because that's very person dependent, but if you have a guy, for example, this guy who was 100 kilo and right now he's 110 kilos on stage, for example, because you book it up to the open division. So let's say the show is on a Saturday. When do you start to carve those guys up? You
Uh,
like to do it like a jump start on the start of the week and then tighten it up, or at the end?
Again, it depends on the person. I mean,
Perfect scenario. Your
perfect
preferable way.
scenario. I mean, because the perfect scenario for a certain individual, I mean, like, might be just adding a little bit of carbs, towards the end of the week, because if they're really stage ready, that's not just the conditioning factor. That's, the fullness factor, everything.
Yeah, but I'm asking about everything because some coaches like to, for example, at the beginning of the week starts to fat load a little bit just to saturate the muscle with the how to say it in English, uh, intramuscular triglyceride, and then just add some pure carbs at the end, maybe with a little bit of the fats, just to keep it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that's an approach. I prefer usually doing it midweek because then you're kind of you're within range, but you still have time to fix anything. You see what I'm saying? Like if you
yes,
start to add in a little bit of carbs, say preferably Wednesday, ideal situation, you still have time. If that's your first variable that you add, everything's been perfect with your water, sodium, you know, everything, how the physique is coming in, it's holding. You start to add in carbs, then Thursday morning you wake up and you're like, okay, this is where we're at. You know, do we keep carbs the same for today? And of course, another documentation that people should be watching during this time is their fasted weight and their nighttime weight. That's going to give you a lot of information too of how things are balancing out with water and your look. So that's going to give you a lot of information too. You know, waking up, okay, we went up in carbs on this day, and we're even lighter tonight. So, then the next day, that if you go up in carbs again or even keep that, the person is getting tighter. It would be a mistake to then say, okay, let's throw a diuretic at this person.
okay. Do you often let your guys carb up on the junk food, or it's always a strict calculated
It should be the
decision?
the sources that they're used to. I do not like doing a bunch of junk stuff. There's some guys that are unique in that way. Like I have, a couple of guys I'm thinking of there. I have to punch them with something nasty, and we have to do it within that window so they get that full look that's the best for them. But for most people, I would rather stick with the sources they're used to control their stomach and everything like that and control the overall look. With the foods they're already taking, a little bit of potatoes and rice and this or that, but maybe folding in a little bit of fattier meats to help the carbs stick a little more. Maybe some salmon, filet mignon, stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. So, what about the food on the show day? Let's says you carbing it up me on the last day of the carb up was the Friday, and now it's Saturday, the show day. I woke up a little bit on the flatter side, for example, but it's not bad, but I could be fuller. What would we eat? Do you like to eat at all on the show day?
Yeah, yeah, you should eat. I mean, it shouldn't be an absurd amount, but sometimes that could be fixed with a little bit of water and sodium. I mean, it could be fixed that quickly. Sometimes people think, oh no, now I got to go and just, smash a ton of carbs. But sometimes, I mean, hey, relax, have a few ounces of water, add a couple of grams of salt to this, drink it, and then, they'll text me back, 30 minutes later. I'm like, dude, I already look better. It could just be that simple, and other guys, just they might need more carbs. They might need to just push more carbs, but still keep that water controlled or even have a tiny bit of water with the meals. It really just depends.
Okay. So what about the case of a 2 days show? I don't know if you have it in the state, but in
Yeah.
Poland, it's very common to, for example, trying to do your regionals on the Saturday and then fighting for your pro card on the Sunday. So
Yeah.
how do you pick me if that's the case?
Yeah, I deal with that all the time. I mean, obviously that's a bit more complicated, but uh assessing the physique. I mean, literally right when they come off stage, how much did they work the guy on stage? Now is he completely just dehydrated and dead? Does he need to rest? Does he need to go eat? Does he need to immediately, rehydrate a little bit and sleep? It just depends. But yeah, we want to get them back to kind of a steady point of where they were the night before, prejudging. We want to kind of stick them at that same point, whether it's reintroducing water, giving them more rest, having them sleep a little bit. Again, their body is in a different state at that time, especially with cortisol and everything. So that's my usual goal, is to kind of stick them the way they were the night before. So that way we kind of replay, going into the next day. But even waking up the next morning, just because the additional time and the stress, you might even wake up in more of a deficit. So, there's even more variables during the day of finals.
Of course. So, what about a case of competing back to back, week after week? For example, I step off the stage Sunday, it's 12 o'clock, and my next show is Saturday, also 12 o'clock. How do you manage this to keep me like a
Yeah. Um, Again, it depends on how that person feels. Sometimes they're just wrecked. You know what I'm saying? They didn't get much sleep. They're fighting with their girlfriend. They
so
had them on
let's
stage too
let's
late.
assume let's assume I
Yeah,
rocked. Let's assume I rocked
you're
and
wrecked. Then I
yeah.
would say the first thing is we need to rest. Maybe the next day, on Monday, we completely just treat it as a rest day, completely just sleep. And sometimes that's the magical component. Then they wake up the next day and they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. But dude, I'm drier. I look so much better. My muscles feel healthier. Um, that
So
would be, kind of my first option.
so
Um,
we'll not be using for example some sort of diuretic, even natural diuretic like
Not usually,
Didelium
because I don't
or
I don't use I don't really use diuretics, so I don't really have any crazy rebounds. Because if you go directly back on your normal food that you were a week out and you get more sleep, sometimes you're even tighter, just the additional time of dieting and from the extra rest.
okay, okay. So
Yeah.
when should I train my legs then?
Yeah,
If we
sometimes, yeah, we got to sneak that
Wednesday,
in, because I've noticed sometimes, if they have the back to back and then they miss that certain day on back or legs, maybe that muscle is just a little flatter going into the second show. So, depending, again, if that person's feeling fantastic, I've had guys to where, they wake up the next morning and get legs out of the way. So that way, their muscles aren't completely, their legs aren't flat going into the second show, but also they don't have to worry about, the inflammation going in it either.
of
They just get it
course.
out of the way.
Okay, so that's it when it comes to Pickwick. I have four more question, and it's coming out of the prep because let's says I was competing in three shows, so the total of the contest prep was 30 weeks. How do you go about it? So straight into the health phase, or maybe you're more like a rebound guy and you like to use that first 4 to 8 weeks to rebound and then just go to the health phase, or maybe not even health phase.
Yeah, it usually 30 weeks. I mean, that's a long time for me. I want to clean things up. I mean, health is number one. I want to, yeah. I mean, if we're going back into off season, there's no reason I mean, sometimes the person isn't going to even respond correctly when they're completely beat up. I would rather clean things up. And again, when my guys are clean, just because you're off the quote steroids doesn't mean you can still grow by other means. That's the whole thing. If the guy was using 6 IUs during prep and he really needs to clean out because of all the steroids during prep and the stress on the body, as maybe the scenario is, okay, let's completely detox, but let's utilize some insulin. Let's, IGF Increlex. Let's double your growth hormone. And a lot of times, and I see it constantly, where they put on great size and they're detoxing at the same time. I do that to people all the time.
So how do you manipulate the drugs training and the diet after the show? So you just lowers the drugs as much as they can, or making a PCT, or how do you manage it?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on the person. I mean, how. how tough was the prep? How are they feeling? Are they feeling completely beat up? You know, if this prep was 30 weeks, then I mean, and say they already cut their injections off a week prior, then we'll just leave them out. But there's certain things we got to pyramid down. You know, the AIs, you know, the fat burners, certain stuff like that. We can kind of coast off slowly. But if it's a person, say they only had a 12-week prep, they were pilled, everything was perfect, then I can say, yeah, we can go into a rebound if you're comfortable with that. Let's switch up, you know, some sups here, and let's maximize this rebound and put on some really good size, you know, and maybe even keep their GH the same, or the person is just in great health, the prep was just super smooth, and we can do all of the above.
Okay, so last question to you. Do you like to your guys come off completely, or you think that competitors never should get off? Like I
Uh
said, off completely, like PCT, and for example, for 12 to 16, 20 weeks, they stayed out of the drugs at all.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the person. It depends on their preference. You know, like you may have a guy where, you know, they come, you know, maybe their cycle, you know, was advanced, or you know, maybe orals. You know, some guys that hit even if it's a low amount of orals, you know, it messes up their lab work. So I mean, you might have to, you know, completely come off and utilize again other tools to move forward. Um, but I'll have some guys that, you know, where everything's perfect, but they're like, you know what? I still want to come off because that's my preference. And I want to have kids someday. So I do want to run a PCT. I want to keep myself familiar with turning back on the lights, you know, and I'm more than fine with that, especially guys that are younger, that are not on TRT, you know, that, you know, say you have a 22-year-old and he wants to have kids, you know, the next 5 years, I
Yeah.
would probably suggest PCT, you know, so he is familiar with turning back, you know, turning things back on. But then you say I have a competitor and he's 51 and he doesn't want kids anymore and he's already on TRT from his doctor, then yeah, you know, we can come off cycle, you know, and you know, go back to TRT and maybe utilize some other variables and get blood work.
Yeah, of course. So that will be all. I think we get through all of the phases that needs to be done to create a perfect competitor, to be honest. Because with those informations, I think people now know what would be the best idea to do. Probably hire you.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's the whole thing. Like, they don't have to hire me. I they can do the research. That's I tell people constantly. Just do the research. Just, you know, go to, you know, look these guys up, look at their resume. You know,
Yeah,
the talk is cool to listen to, but look at what they've actually produced. You know, it's going to narrow it down real quick. They don't have to hire me. There's other good coaches out there. It just you know, really do your research.
of course. And I am a big believer in staying a good connection with the coach. Sometimes the coach that know less is actually better than the coach who knows more, just because you get along with this coach. And I think that's a huge thing, to just get along with your coach. Because if you're not, doesn't matter how big the knowledge of the coach is, if for some reasons you don't get along.
Yeah. No, you have to have a, you know, a respectful, you know, relationship there. You know, I deal with, you know, everybody in obviously the majority through text and email, but I do set up phone calls here and there, and uh there's you know, you get to know, you know, the person more in depth that way, you know.
Of course.
You know, and of course if there's other things going on personal, you know, I mean, I'm not a therapist, but you know, I try to help if I can, you know, whether, you know, because sometimes, you know, the conversation will start off about vegetables and then we're talking about spiritual things, you know what
Yeah,
I'm
of
saying?
course. Yeah.
But if that helps that person or whatever, or if that builds a better rapport, you know, then that's great. But yeah, no, I'm 24/7. Yeah, people know I don't mess around. You can text me at 3 in the morning. It doesn't matter. You can text me at noon on Christmas. It doesn't. I don't
Yeah,
stop. This is all I do 24/7. This is it.
yeah. And this is why I am gonna to thank you once again just to come to my podcast. We stayed here for 2.5 hours already, so I'm not gonna take a longer of your time. I really appreciate that you come to my podcast, especially that is I have a very small channel and it's most for the Polish people. Even though some guys from the States are watching me, so
Yeah.
that's a great. So we're gonna cut it off here. And I just wanted to say that if anyone wants to contact you or anything, that every informations and contacts will be in the description below. And if you guys can, just please share this video, subscribe to the channel, leave comments down below, leave a thumbs up or thumbs down if you don't like it. Doesn't matter, everything is gonna improve the visibility of this video, especially that
Yeah.
YouTube is kind of shitty at this just because I am uploading it from Poland. They cut off the views from the people outside the my country, so that sucks. So this is why, especially guys from abroad, if you can share it, I will be appreciative of that. So thank you once again, Blue. I hope that everything is spending the best 2.5 hours of their life. I certainly do. So thank you so much once again, and have a great day because it's a day out there, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I have watched your podcast actually a
Thank
couple
you.
of times. I saw the one with what they call him Boss Outlaw.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
this Stefan Kinsel. I
yeah,
was
Seven. I think he's absolutely fantastic.
he
He's one.
is
Yeah,
he,
he is.
if you see
When I
his
talk
if you
about
see
other,
his reaction live on the his competitors win or lose, or this guy is live and breathe bodybuilding. My wife was competing at her pro debut 2 years ago, and we saw the Stefan live. And this guy is not even care if the people watching. He gonna lay down on the ground and scream, or jump up and scream, or shout it out loud. And this guy is, I told you, this guy is bodybuilding. This guy is bodybuilding. I love him. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
Stefan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agreed with a lot of the stuff he actually said. I mean, he seems like a really cool dude, and he's definitely fantastic at what he does. When I talk about that, there's other good coaches out there.
Of
He's one
course.
of them. He's fantastic. He's fantastic. But yeah, man, thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, if you want me to come on again in the future, yeah, we'll definitely schedule something out. But yeah, thank you.
Great. We have a deal.
Okay, take care, man.
Have a nice day.